Good afternoon. Thank you very much for granting us this interview. Can you state your name, your year, what year were you born, and your profession?
Good afternoon, Nancy. My name is Thomas Nguyen. I was born in 1960 in Saigon, uh, South Vietnam.
What is your profession now, sir?
I'm a lieutenant colonel, active duty in the U.S. Army.
Wonderful. After Saigon Fair, what happened to you and your family? Can you recall?
Yes, I was 15 years old at the time, and my father was a career officer in the South Vietnamese Army with 22 years of service. He was a captain, signal corps officer, and we were living in my father's army base in Gava. And when the communists took over South Vietnam, they gave us all of the families in that army base 72 hours to move out of the base. So what happened was my father moved us to one of my older sisters in Phu Nhuận, in Saigon.
How many siblings do you have?
We have 7 together, 4 sisters and 3 brothers, including me.
You the younger one, or
I'm the youngest brother, but I have one younger sister.
I see. So what daily life like during that time? They already push you out of your home. So what happened? You went to school, or what happened after that?
Yeah, what happened was, my father, he retired from the South Vietnamese Army 6 months before the communists took over, and he was 60 years old at that time, so he never saw his pension check, so we had no income, basically. So my parents, they had to ask around, and they found out that in Long Thanh province, the communist government there, they gave away jungle land for families who want to make a farm out of the jungle land. So my parents took me and one of my older brother to Long Thanh and applied for that program. So that's how we were able to sustain, to feed our family in those 5 years under the communist control. We made a farm out of the jungle, but the issue is the communist government. They are not so nice. They were using us as free laborers. Okay, so it took us and the other farmers almost 3 years to finish making a farm out of the jungle. Then the communist government confiscated all the farmland and making a rubber plantation, a government control rubber plantation. So at that time they told all the farmers to move closer to a concentrated camp, and then they confiscate all the farmland and make it a government rubber plantation. And each family has to have at least one person working for the government rubber plantation, and they didn't pay that well. So my older brother had to work for the government rubber plantation to plant the rubber plants. And so what happened was the farmers were able to do the crops between the rubber trees when they are young, for 3 years. Okay, after the 3 years, the tree is so big and nobody can cultivate anything in that land, become a jungle of rubber plantation. Then I would have to work for the government rubber plantation after that.
What happened when you become a worker for that plantation? Did you pay them you enough so you can eat, or how you support yourself?
No, I remember my older brother. They didn't even have money to pay the rubber plantation employee. They pay by bobor, which is a kind of
Grain.
cheap grain, and not enough to feed himself. Not even able to feed himself. So we had to support him as well.
When you become rubber plantation employee too, so who support you? Is it your father have to work to, subsidize you and your brother?
I didn't have to be a rubber plantation employee because when my parents saw that, so they said that was it. So they determined to let us escape Vietnam. So the three brothers, myself and my two older brothers, escaped out of Vietnam in 1980.
How you plan the trip and what happened to you?
Well, the trip was very, very difficult, dangerous trip. My parents had to pay money for the three of us to have seats in that boat, and it is a very small boat, river boat, and we had 43 people altogether. The organizer and the owner of the boat, they were responsible to plan for the trip. So we didn't know, we didn't even know them. We just knew that we had a seat in that boat and we tried to escape out of the country. That was all we knew at that time. So when my mother took three of us down to Rạch Giá and waiting at the location to meet the organizer, and then they took us to a different location to wait for the boat to pick us up. However, the local people they knew they knew everybody by face. So when they saw us, they know that we are from Saigon and we trying to escape. So it was very difficult for us to do that. So we had to move the locations 3 times. Finally, we were able to board the boat and head to sea.
I want to ask you that when you went to Long Khánh to the jungle to try to make farm out of jungle, so you be able to go to school at all? You were 15 years old.
No, before the communist took over, I was attending a Don Bosco Technical High School in Gaba. And after the communists took over, my father didn't have any income, and my parents, they didn't like the idea that the communists they use school for propaganda anyway. The students didn't actually learn much, so that's why we didn't go to school under the communist control, and we work on a farm instead.
How long you were on your boat and how you were rescued? Can you recall?
Yes, we were on the boat for 6 days and 7 nights. We boarded the boat at about 10 p.m. really late and really dark. And then we headed out to the ocean. And the next day, then we believed we arrived to international water. So the operator of the boat and some other men in our boat to find a long stick and a white piece of fabric. So they raised the white fabric up as the sign for SOS. And then there was a big ship coming from the horizon heading to us. At first we were happy. We saw, oh, right, we have some help. But then when that ship came close enough for us to see who's on board the ship, we realized that they were Thai pirates, because all men in mid-20 years old, and they had bare chest and only had their underwear on them. So sure enough, when they came to our boat, they circled around our boat like 3 times to see that we had no weapon, and then they used ropes to swing down from their ship to our boat, each with a small knife, to attack us and to rob us, of our valuables, and before they left us. They even took the compass from the boat operator. So after that, the operator had to use the moon and the sun for direction where we go.
Anybody got killed or anybody got hurt in some way?
Yeah, we were lucky that nobody got killed, nobody got hurt. There was one young lady that she, I guess she was smiling to the pirates when they were searching our body. They did that for everybody, and she was smiling so that they won't hurt her. But instead, I think one of the pirates, he liked her, so he tried to pull her up to the front of our boat and tried to push her up to their ship. But she was very lucky. She was, when she realized that they were trying to kidnap her, she was crying, and she pulled back and then ran back into the boat. And she was really lucky that they let her go.
So tell me how you rescue.
After the first pirates robbed our boat, then our boat the engine died. Okay, so the boat was basically drifting in the international waters for 3 days, and in the daytime we saw several cargo ship, the huge cargo ship, passing by from the horizon, and we tried to make noise and use some piece of metal to reflect the sun and ask for help. But at that time, as I remember, most of the countries around that area didn't accept refugees. Only Malaysia
What
did.
year is it?
Right, 1980, right, in January 1980. So that I think that was why none of the other cargo ship that stopped by and helped us. So finally, the third day, then there was a huge cargo ship going to Singapore. They stopped. Okay, so they took all the women and kids, young kids, to their ship, and then the other men stay back on our boat, and they agreed to tow our boat to with them, and because they will pass by Malaysia. So they said when they pass by Malaysia in the international water, they will let us to go inside Malaysia from international water. So they towed our boat for one night, the whole night, and that almost broke our tiny boat compared to the big ship, you know. But luckily we survived. And then the next day they led all the women and kids back to our boat, and they pointed to the horizon that is Malaysia, and we could barely see some shade, you know, trees shade from the horizon. So they said, okay, just go straight in there. That's Malaysia. But the problem is our boat was still with no engine. The engine was not working. So the operator keep trying to jack the engine, and from time to time, and finally, just like miracle happened, the engine started working again after one day, almost a whole day that the operator trying to do that. So we had it in. I think it was like 1 p.m. that day when the engine started working, and we headed straight to inland, and it took us the whole day. I believe we arrived to land about after 11 p.m. that day, and we believe the people from that cargo ship that was Malaysia, but of course nobody know for sure until the next day when we have some men, you know, walking to try to find the local authorities, and finally somebody found a Malaysia Coast Patrol officer, and we knew for sure that okay, that was Malaysia, and they processed us into the refugee camp in Malaysia.
Tell me about when you reached to the land of Malaysia.
My feeling was happy, but not safe, because we were happy because we reached land, because our boat was so damaged and nobody know how long it would last in the sea, in high sea. So we were lucky that we were able to get into the beach. But in my mind, you know, I wasn't sure if that was Malaysia. I hope that was, but who knows? You know, what happened if that was Vietnam, for example, and we got captured again by the communist government, right? So, but it was too late that night, so we had to take everybody and some of the plastic pieces, so we can make a camp on the beach that night, and let the other women sleep inside, other men sleep outside to protect them. And we had to wait until the next morning to see exactly, you know, where this is. But that night, of course, I couldn't sleep. And the next morning, you know, when I woke up early in the morning at 6 o'clock, I couldn't find our boat anywhere. And I looked down on the beach. I saw pieces of wood from our boat. So the boat was broken into pieces overnight, with all of the thing that it endured for the 7 days at sea. It just broken into pieces. So we were lucky. We reached land that day. Otherwise, it would broken into pieces in the ocean, and most of us would die. You know.
How's the Malaysian received you?
The Malaysian coastal police officer, they were fair enough. So once they found us, they protect us at night. They have 2 policemen guarding us the whole day. But the next day we heard some woman complaining that at night some of the women were being pulled by the Malaysian police officer. So but they pull back and they crawl inside in the middle of the group. So they didn't. Nobody got hurt or anything. So the next morning, the woman told all the men. So we said, okay, at night all the women sleep usually inside, and all the men sleep outside. So nobody can pull any woman out at night. So we did that, and it worked. So it took them like 2 days and 2 nights before they have transportation to take us to the refugee camp.
How you eat? I mean, who give you food and?
In those 2 days, I didn't recall that I ate anything. We had some pineapple that we bought on the boat, but that boat was trying to disguise as a pineapple boat. So the owner had lots of pineapple. So even in those 7 days, I only had 1 or 2 slices of pineapple a day. I didn't feel hungry. So those two days on the beach, we basically survived by our own food that we brought to the beach.
How long you stay in the camp and what life like in the camp?
We stay 6 months in the Pulau Bidang refugee camp. At that time, it was the most crowded camp. Almost, I believe we had 40,000 refugees on the camp. The reason I knew, I listened to the BBC radio at night, so they reported that. It's very crowded, but life was, I say life was okay, was fair enough for that kind of refugee camp. There was food, lots of canned food. We didn't have enough fresh vegetable, and fresh meat, but they issue those like twice a week. So it was fair.
And then who sponsored you? You 3 brothers. You all underage or you already, adult age at that time?
We all were adult. I was the youngest one. So I was almost 20. Yeah, both of my older brother, they was like 23, 24 years old. We had one older sister who lived in Virginia at that time. So we contacted her and she sponsored us. That's why we got the priority number 1. So it took us 6 months, which is the farthest time at that time.
Tell me about when you first time you see United States. Was it like what you imagine in your mind and what you feeling like?
When I was in Vietnam, we knew that U.S. is a rich country, big city, but I never saw much picture or anything about U.S. So I had no idea, But we know that it is a free country, a very civilized country, and we should be fine. So I kind of wait and see when we arrived in the U.S., but we were happy that we know that we reached freedom.
Um, how about when you come to US? What you do? Would you continuing to go school, or you got a job, or how's that go?
Yes, all three of us brothers, we immediately applied for school after we settled down at my older sister's house. We were lucky at that time. There was a community college only about 2 miles from my sister's house, so we could walk to the school and apply for financial aid and the process to be a student there. So we went to school. Two of my older brothers, their English was better, so they were able to find a part-time job in school right away. But for me, because my English was very weak, so I had to they didn't let me work. So the first year I had to study only, and then the second year then I could get a part-time job in school, so like my older brothers.
You explain any discrimination of teacher or anyone?
No, everybody knew about our situation as refugees. They were very curious, but they kind of admiring that because they knew that we had to go through so much before we reached freedom to the U.S. So they kind of were understanding and curious about our stories. But the issue we had was the biggest issue that I faced with all the Vietnamese refugees, the language barrier that we have to try to study so hard and try to overcome the language barrier so we can do better in school.
Tell me about why you decided to join the U.S. Army. Was it your father background has something to do with that?
Yes, definitely. I when I was a kid in Vietnam, I always dreamt to join the South Vietnamese Armed Forces. Many of my uncles, cousins served in the South Vietnamese Army, Air Force, Navy, and I talked to them every time they came to visit my parents. So I always want to be in the military. So when I was ready to join the U.S. Army, I go ahead and do it because at that time, because I went to for two reasons. The main reasons because I want to show to the U.S. that my appreciation because the U.S. is a very generous country that accepting us and the other Vietnamese refugees. So I want to pay back something. So to show that we appreciate their action, and now I am glad to be part of the team to help to protect the country.
Well, you done very well, Lieutenant Colonel. How about your dad, your mom, and the rest of the siblings? That they get the opportunity to come here or not?
Yes. My sister also sponsored my parents and the rest of my family back in Vietnam. And in 1992, they all allowed to come to the U.S. So we had our big family reunion in the U.S. at that time.
Wonderful. Congratulations. Tell us about your training time in the army. Any challenge or memorial experience that you want to share with us?
Sure, I had many memorable events in my at the training camps. Uh, for example, one of the memorable experiences when I first go to the boot camp for the first time. Okay, at that time, my English was very weak, and I didn't know anything about the military jargons like double time. And so when I signed up, I talked to my professor, military professor at college, that how do I know all of these military terms at boot camp. What I had in my mind was I wanted them to teach me some, but they didn't have time to do that. So they told me, "Don't worry, you will pick up. Just look at your compass, how they do it, and you follow them." Okay, so I had to learn all of those military terminologies from watching the other people, the other cadets, they call cadets, doing that. And the most memorable thing that happened to me at that time was because I joined the boot camp, okay, and they put me in a platoon which is like 45 people, and I didn't know anybody there. So we show up as civilian, and then they issue us military uniform, right? And all of the equipment that we need for the boot camp, which is like rucksack and everything, we have to carry. So, and then the next day, we had to go to get a haircut, a military haircut, and then, but what I didn't know after the haircut was done, they basically shaved our heads, okay, so, and after that, all of the American guys, they all look alike, and with the uniform, and everybody have the extremely short haircut, they all look alike. So I had a hard time to find my platoon back because I look at the other platoon guy, they all look the same to me. So I had a hard time to run around and trying to find my platoon, but finally I found it. But it was one of the most memorable things in my life at that time at boot camp.
When you didn't find them, what you feel like?
I felt great. I almost missed formation, but when I found them, I joined them, and luckily I didn't. The instructor, the drill sergeant, didn't pull me out and penalize me in front of my platoon because I wasn't lit, but I almost.
That's it. Okay. You were in Afghanistan and as well as Iraq. Can you share with us the experience from these, very hot battlefield?
Yes, in Iraq, I was the advisor to the Iraqi Ministry of Defense. We advised the 1-star, 2-star Iraqi general and colonel on the logistic function, because my branch is logistic. So we train them how to become self-sufficient and how to request and set up the logistic system based on the U.S. Army model. It is a difficult task with the language barrier that they have. Most of them don't speak much English. We have to use interpreter. So and they never, under Saddam Hussein, their logistic system is completely different. For example, under Saddam Hussein, every time an Iraqi army unit they move everything with them, all the furniture, desk, chair, and whatever they can take out of the building, they take with them. So, but at that time the U.S. were building the army bases for the Iraqi army, and we try to tell them, hey, when you move into this army base that we just built for you, you don't need to take furniture because they are already there. Leave the furniture back to your own base. But they didn't understand that, so they just took everything with them. And when they came to the new base and they walked inside each building, they said, "Wow, brand new furniture, brand new desk, chair." So they realized that why we told them that. So it was entertaining sometimes to work with them, and I guess that somehow explained to me how American military advisor worked with the South Vietnamese soldier before 1975. They probably have some similar experience as well with language barrier and things.
Can you tell us about what happened in Afghanistan?
In Afghanistan, I was doing a lot of work with country building. We helped build a lot of school for Afghanistan school system, and also helping Afghanistan like agriculture department with their biogas project. But we did a lot of school construction, and I was very glad to oversee some of those construction projects. It is very rewarding to see the Afghan children, boy and girl, have a nice school for them to study every day. Because in the summertime, it is very hot over there. Every day is 120 degrees every day in the summer, and their old school didn't have enough buildings, so some of the kids, the teacher had to set up tents, just a plastic cover to make a classroom, and in the heat, and the kids have to sit, under the cover with the heat to learn, which is a very difficult thing for them. So with the school construction, they have a nice building, nice school, nice classroom. So their living standard is much better.
So you was in those countries to helping people, and you were when you were young, you were in the base with your father. Was it bring up your any memory or anything that you feel strange that you were in Vietnam and now you in one country and then you're a high-ranking officer representing U.S. Can you share with us your feeling and your thought on that matter?
Yes, it is a very rewarding experience. When I joined the U.S. Army, I never thought I would stay in the Army that long. I never thought that I would be a lieutenant colonel someday. I never thought I would have a chance to be advisor to a foreign country. So when all of this happened, it made me felt like my dream came true, and I appreciate that to see that I have a chance to help our allies to to defend their country and to build up their country, and to become a good ally with the U.S. So it is an honor. It is a very privileged and rewarding experience for me.
I understand that you are one of the founder for VAFA. Can you tell us about this organization mission? How many members does the organization have? And what was the most significant it achieved?
Yes, the VAFA means Vietnamese American Armed Forces Association. Um, the idea came about when I came back from Iraq in 2007. During my tour in Iraq, I met a Navy Lieutenant Commander Chris Fan, and he was a very nice, excellent young officer. So I met him in Iraq when we both were waiting for helicopter to go to do our missions, and we got stranded at that landing zone for a couple of hours, half a day. So while waiting there, I happened to see Chris was there too, and we were the only Vietnamese American officer at that landing zone. So I approached him and started talking to him, and he talked to me, and we exchanged our information and we keep in touch. So when we came back, luckily he stationed in San Diego, and I stationed in Northern California. So we got together with some other Vietnamese American officers. So we talked about having an organization to help our comrades, Vietnamese American military members, to get to know each other, to help each other, and to help the communities in the U.S. So the mission so that was how VAFA came about, and VAFA mission is to share our military experience with the Vietnamese community in the U.S. To promote our pride and benefits of serving in the U.S. military, and also for our members to help each other with our mentorship and networking, so our military member can help each other with the military career, and also if any member and their family needs help, we can look into that and support them as much as we can.
I see. How many Vietnamese American are in service, and any of them die on duty? Can you share?
Yes, the U.S. Department of Defense doesn't track all of their military members by ethnic group, because I think it is some kind of privatized information there. But we notice we do have a number of Vietnamese Americans join the armed forces, and the number is growing every year. But compared to the population whole in the military, compared with the other ethnic groups, Asian ethnic like Chinese, South Korea, Filipino, Vietnamese American military members still very small in number, but the number is growing. So that's good to see that. As far as the number of Vietnamese American service members sacrificed their life on duty, we VAFA does track, and I believe we have about 15 Vietnamese American service members that we knew that sacrificed their life while on duty defending this country in different countries, most of them in Iraq and Afghanistan. But DoD doesn't track these number by any ethnic group either, so it's very difficult for us to find out. We have to find out from our own members and through the media.
If you're talking about 15 member of VAFA die, and any of them that you remember about their case, or you attend their funeral, or what's your feeling like, their family like?
No, I didn't have a chance to attend any of these funerals because it happened at different time, at different location. But there was one person, Sergeant First Class Tung Nguyen. He died in Iraq, and at the same time I was serving in Iraq, but because he was with the special force, so and I didn't know him before until I saw the news on the internet that we have a member of the special force, a Vietnamese American service member with serving in the U.S. Special Force who recently died in battle. So I began to know him at that time, to read about his bio and his history with the U.S. Army. So I was very touched at that time to find out that he died in battle, and I was fighting the same war at that time. So I was very touched about that.
What is your future plan like in 5 and in 10 years?
Yes, in the next 5 years, I will retire from the U.S. Army, and I will focus on my civilian career and my family. But I also want to continue to work with VAFA and volunteer with different non-profit organization through my communities to help the communities and to promote the awareness of military career and service, so we can be proud of what we do, and those Vietnamese American service members contribute to this country. The next 10 years, between 5 and 10 years, then I would concentrate more on working with the communities and VAFA, and also probably volunteer to work with the junior ROTC and high school for those young boys and girls who want to think about a military career. I would be happy to answer the questions and be a mentor for them in that regard.
Wonderful. So if you have a wish, what that wish would be for you, your family, and your countries?
Yeah, my dream would be complete if I see Vietnam to become a free country again, and that would be my final wish to see that happen, and then also I would like to see more Vietnamese American to get to know about the military career, so that we can be proud of them, and hopefully one day they can go back to Vietnam and help the country there.
Wonderful. Do you have anything that you want to say and we have not asked you yet?
Yes, I like to see more involvement from the Vietnamese Americans in overseas. Like what I've seen is most Vietnamese American parents, because they have so much experience in the Vietnam War, so many of them kind of hesitant when they hear their sons or daughters want to join the U.S. military, even though they value the service, but they also kind of hesitate to see that their own son and daughter have to enter a difficult career, which require a lot of sacrifice. So it is very difficult for parents to encourage their sons and daughters to join even the U.S. military in that sense, because they don't want their loved one to live a dangerous life. I understand that, but I also want them to understand that military career is one of the, just like any other career, it is they are good. They are opportunities for the children to explore about, and after they got through the training, they become a better citizen for the country, so we can be proud of them. So I would like to see more involvement from the Vietnamese American overseas to understand and support their children should they want to join the military.
Well, thank you very much, sir, for your time and your contribution. We appreciate so much.
You're very welcome, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share my feeling and experience with you and with other with the Vietnamese community overseas.
Thank you again. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.